The hallway was enveloped in a tense silence, the kind that suggests unseen observers holding their breath. Judge Nathaniel Carter stood alone in the East Corridor of the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. His posture was upright, hands resting lightly on his cane. Dressed in a charcoal suit with gold cufflinks, his wedding band gleamed, a testament to 52 years of marriage. His eyes moved over the portraits lining the walls, faces of former justices from eras past. He wasn't in a hurry. He preferred to move at his own pace. Invited to speak at a private ceremony commemorating the anniversary of a landmark case he had influenced decades earlier, his name wasn't on the plaques, but those in the know recognized his contributions. His name whispered in law school halls, cited in legal journals. Yet, none of that mattered to Officer Brandon Hayes. "Excuse me, sir." Hayes's voice was sharp, almost accusatory. "May I see your ID?" Judge Carter turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Of course," he replied, reaching into the inner pocket of his suit. "I'm here for the Winslow event." Officer Rachel Lynn stood slightly behind Hayes, her hand resting near her belt, watching Judge Carter intently, as if anticipating sudden movement. Hayes examined the ID, flipping it over as if suspecting it was counterfeit. "And what are you doing back here?" Hayes questioned. "I was asked to wait here by Justice Winslow's assistant, Marcus or perhaps Morris. I can't recall his exact name, while they finalized preparations in the chamber." "You were told to wait here, in this hallway?" Hayes pressed. "Yes," Judge Carter affirmed calmly. "Reddit +1 City Journal +1. Hayes's expression hardened. "You don't have any credentials?" "No badge or pass." "I wasn't provided one," Judge Carter replied. "But I have the invitation on my phone. Let me retrieve it." As he began to scroll through his device, his movements deliberate, Hayes stepped closer. "There's no need to use your phone. Just answer my questions." Judge Carter paused, looking up with a hint of weariness. "Young man," he began slowly, "I've been answering questions longer than you've been alive. But right now, your approach isn't standard procedure. It's based on assumptions." Hayes's jaw tightened. "What did you just say to me?" "You're making assumptions," Judge Carter reiterated. "I suggest you contact someone who can clarify matters before this situation escalates unnecessarily." That was the tipping point. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Hayes ordered, his voice slicing through the stillness. Judge Carter blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Excuse me, you're refusing to comply with a lawful order? Hand behind your back now." Judge Carter remained motionless, not out of defiance, but sheer disbelief. "I've shown you my ID, explained my presence, and you haven't verified any of it. You've simply assumed." Hayes interrupted. "Sir, this is your final warning." Officer Lynn shifted uncomfortably, her silence speaking volumes. She appeared young, perhaps in her late 20s, still acclimating to the weight of the uniform. She had followed Hayes's lead, but seemed unsettled by the unfolding events. "Hayes," she murmured, just loud enough for him to hear. "Stay out of this," he snapped. "Procedure is procedure." Judge Carter exhaled deeply, setting his phone on a nearby bench. "I'll accompany you," he said softly. "But mark my words, you're making a mistake you'll remember." Hayes moved swiftly, pulling Judge Carter's hands behind his back with unnecessary force, the cold metal cuffs clicking into place. Judge Carter winced but remained silent, standing tall with eyes fixed ahead. Officer Lynn finally spoke up. "Are we really doing this here, in the Supreme Court building?" Hayes turned to her, his expression stern. He had no ID badge, no pass. For all we know, he could be casing the place. Lynn shook her head, but didn't argue further. She led the way as Hayes escorted Judge Carter down the corridor, passing portraits of esteemed legal minds, some of whom Judge Carter had once debated in courtrooms nationwide. As they proceeded, a clerk from one of the justices' offices stepped into the hallway, halting abruptly. "Judge Carter?" the clerk asked, bewildered. Judge Carter turned his head, but continued walking. "Please inform Justice Winslow I may be delayed," he said. The clerk's eyes widened, darting between the cuffs and the officers. Hayes pressed on, indifferent to the growing attention. They led Judge Carter to a side room near the security area, seating him unceremoniously in a chair. Hayes paced, casting occasional glances at the judge. "You'll be processed and questioned," Hayes muttered. "We'll determine your true identity." Judge Carter chuckled quietly. Hayes stopped pacing. "Something funny, old man?" Judge Carter met his eyes with quiet steadiness. "No, just thinking how strange it is being treated like this in the same building where I once testified to change federal law." Officer Lynn shifted in her spot again, her discomfort growing more visible. Judge Carter turned toward her, his voice firm but not unkind. "What's your name, officer?" "Lynn," she replied after a pause. "You know who Justice Clara Winslow is, don't you?" "Of course. I'm her guest." Lynn looked at Hayes, uncertainty plain on her face. "Maybe we should call her office," she suggested. Hayes's voice was like a hammer. "We follow protocol, not rumors from suspects." Judge Carter leaned back, cuffs clinking softly against the edge of the table. "Then call your supervisor," he said calmly. "And while you're at it, I like my phone call. I prefer to speak with my attorney." He paused, then added, "Though not all calls go to lawyers. Some go to people who shake the walls you think are holding you up." Lynn hesitated, then pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Lynn. I need confirmation on a detained individual named Nathaniel Carter, possible guest of Justice Winslow. Can you contact her chambers and verify?" There was a moment of silence, a crackle of static, then a reply. "Stand by for confirmation." Hayes rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed. "Waste of time." Judge Carter didn't respond. He stared at the table before him, its surface scratched and worn, reminding him of the many tables he had sat at in jury deliberation rooms, community centers, courtrooms. Always on the other side. "You know what bothers me the most?" he said softly. Hayes ignored him. "I said," Judge Carter continued, raising his voice just a little, "we didn't even ask who I was. You just looked at me and decided." Hayes smirked. "I go off behavior, not looks." "No," Judge Carter replied. "You go off fear. And that makes you dangerous." Before Hayes could retort, the door opened with a loud creak. A man in a Navy suit stepped in, breathing hard, irritation already radiating from him. "Who authorized this?" he barked. "That's Judge Nathaniel Carter, guest of Justice Winslow. What the hell is going on?" Hayes straightened. "Sir," he had no credentials. "We followed protocol." "No, you didn't," the man snapped. "You followed whatever bias was in your head." That man was supposed to be escorted to the chamber, not cuffed like a pickpocket. He turned to Lynn. "Who's in charge here?" She glanced at Hayes, then back at the staffer. Technically, he was. The man threw up his hands. Unbelievable. He walked over to Judge Carter and carefully unlocked the cuffs. "Sir, I apologize." "Deeply. I'm not hurt," Carter replied as he slowly stood. "Just disappointed." He adjusted his tie and picked up his cane. "Justice Winslow has been notified. She's not happy. I imagine she wouldn't be." Hayes looked stunned. "Wait, so you really are a judge?" "I was," Carter said, glancing at him. "Retired now. But yes, I spent 40 years making sure a man like you couldn't do what you just did." Apparently, I missed a few spots. The room fell silent. Carter turned to Lynn. "Thank you for calling in. Don't let silence turn you into someone you're not." She nodded, barely able to meet his eyes. The staffer gestured. "This way, sir." As they stepped into the hallway, the atmosphere felt different, still quiet, but charged like the air before a storm. Clerks gathered near the chamber doors, whispering, pointing. But Carter walked tall, cane tapping gently against the marble floor. Justice Clara Winslow stood just outside her chambers, arms crossed. She wore a dark blue pantsuit instead of a robe, but her presence commanded the hallway like a gavel strike. When she saw Nathaniel, something passed between them. Not shock, not pity. Just the kind of understanding born of decades, knowing how the world works. "Nat," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry." He nodded once. "Not your fault." Her eyes moved to the officers still standing at the end of the hall. "I want their names. And their supervisors. Today." "Yes, ma'am," her aide replied. She turned back to him. "You all right?" "I'm fine. Nothing I haven't seen before, he said. But I didn't expect to see it here. Neither did I, she murmured. They walked into her office, the door closing behind them with a heavy click. Inside, the walls were lined with law books and photos, Carter swearing her in, standing beside late justices, overseas dignitaries. "Do you want to cancel the speech?" she asked, moving behind her desk. "I can shut it down right now." "No," he said. "Let them hear it. Every single one." She nodded, sat down, leaned forward. "I'm going to make this right." "You already have," he said, half smiling. "That's the difference now. 40 years ago, I'd have been thrown out and left on the curb." She looked out the window. "They're going to feel this." "I don't want revenge," he said. "I want memory. I want them to remember that today, in the highest court in the land, a man without a weapon, without a threat, was still treated like a suspect. And if it can happen here, where can it?" She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Want some coffee before we go in?" He chuckled. "Only if it's that terrible stuff you used to brew back when we clerked in Detroit." She laughed, stood up. "The machine's long gone, but the bitterness remains." As she walked to the side table, Carter leaned on his cane, staring at the door. "You know what burns the most?" he said softly. "Not the cuffs, not the humiliation, not even the assumptions. It's the fact that those boys walked in with more power than sense. They didn't know me, didn't care, and they bet their badge I didn't belong." She poured 2 cups. "I know, but we're not done fixing this place." "No," he said, taking the cup. "We're not." Her aide returned. "They're ready." They walked together toward the chamber doors. Behind them, whispers swelled. A judge cuffed, detained inside these very walls. He didn't want pity. He didn't need it. He wanted attention. Not for himself, but for the truth. Because no badge, title, or legacy can shield a man from being misjudged when his face speaks louder than his name.